so I'll tell him he's definitely excused from participating. But he has prepared a statement that I'm going to read, and then we're going to go into their statements. I'm going to pick their order real quick, and then I'm going to read Justin's statement. All right, I'm going to read Justin's statement, and then Max will go, and then Travis will go. So this is from Justin Brown. First of all, I want to apologize for not being able to make it tonight. There have been 2 sudden deaths in my family, and I feel it's my duty to be here with them. I hope it's understood that at this time it's not an excuse, and I was looking forward to discussing these important issues. It's no secret that I didn't run or serve on SGA staff this last year. Despite my involvement freshman and sophomore year, I was starting to see that many of the negative stereotypes of SGA, like inefficiencies, dirty politics, and some truth to them. I then decided to focus my time in different organizations on campus. With that being said, when talks about elections started coming around, I was initially hesitant. But as you can now see, I've decided that I'm now committed to run for SGA president. There are 3 things that I think that lead me to this decision. 1, SGA has too much potential to actually make a difference and impact at UofL, university. After talking with and watching past presidents, I believe that I still have the skill set to do this job and do it well. And 3, and what I ultimately did was the opportunity to work with such an incredible team. The staff and candidates on hard vision are so incredible, and I want to see what we can do together. Ultimately, though, the voter must choose between my opponents and myself at the top of the ballot. A vote for me isn't one for false or unreasonable promises. Unfortunately, I do not have the time to explain our platform in much detail, but I hope my VPs have done so tonight. All I'm asking is that as students trust me to provide the responsibility and dedication that is needed to be a student body president. Justin Brown. Okay, Max?
First, let me say real quick before the time starts. These SGA things tend to get a little messy. I don't know who here has been involved before, but Justin's a really good friend of mine. He's one of the first people I met when I got to this university. So I don't care what slate you're on, or if you're not on a slate, before you go to bed tonight, say a prayer for Justin. Anyway, hello everyone. My name is Max Morley. I'm currently the senior advisor to the Student Government Association. I'm a proud brother of the Kappa Sigma fraternity. I'm a former ULDM team captain and the former statewide volunteer coordinator for the Kentucky Democratic Party. But none of that's why I'm here tonight. I'm here tonight because while my opponents are running for the office of SGA president, I'm running for the office of student body president. Too often we forget that these elections aren't about SGA. They're about the students. And that's why I'm here today. I'm running so that I can serve and protect the students of this university so that they can have the best experience possible at UofL and experience the most efficient campus and the most livable place to live and learn. I've spent the past year serving students. I've begun the fight against budget cuts and against tuition costs. I've begun the fight to give all students in the Commonwealth of Kentucky an affordable and strong education so that they can continue their futures. We began this fight with the legislation that I drafted for the Kentucky General Assembly. We began this fight by hosting the largest rally that has ever been seen in the history of the rally for higher education. We began this fight by marching barefoot into our state capitol. But this is just the beginning of the fight, and I'm running to continue it. Thank you.
My fellow students, today I'm running for student body president because I'm tired of being left out, and I want to bring together students from all ages, all races, all gender identities, and backgrounds together. I've invested years of my life pursuing my education here at UofL. I hold 2 bachelor's and a master's degree, and I'm working for my PhD in electrical engineering, specializing in computer vision. If engineers are best at anything, it's tackling large problems and building solutions. SGA is broken to a certain degree. Every year, students get slapped with new student fees, tuition rates explode each year, and Sodexo serves poor food at high prices. And at night, services shut down and the crimes come out. I'm not a doctor yet, but I'm working on a cure for SGA. The strength of our university is its diversity, and I want to bring together faces from many places and races. As your next SGA president, I will help bring down the cost of college by building public-private partnerships, reaching out to the city government, and slashing wasteful spending. I make campus safety my number one priority by working to build a West Campus police station so students feel safe at night. I'll expand REACH services to include more than just the general education classes. And I'll help transform UofL into a 24/7 campus where students can eat, sleep, exercise, and use our libraries 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Finally, my fellow distinguished students, please allow me to address one of the gravest challenges facing UofL, and that is trying to increase the number of albino squirrels on this campus. It takes an engineer to solve these many things, and when I'm elected SGA president, I'll not only work 24 hours a day, I'll work 25 hours a day until these things are fixed and the albino squirrel population is even stronger than it is. If you're tired of being left out, vote for Travis. If the campus feels unsafe, vote for Travis. If you want UofL to be a late night campus, vote for Travis. And if you think college is too expensive, vote for Travis. But most importantly, if you want to see more albino squirrels on this campus, vote for Travis. My fellow students, I ask you to stay thirsty for change, vote responsibly, and cast your vote for Travis Galt. Thank you.
First question, sorry, so Travis will start here. One of the largest roles as an SGA president has is serving as a member of the University of Louisville Board of Trustees. What attributes and experience do you have do you believe that qualifies you to serve on the Board of Trustees?
Okay. How long do I answer this?
Keep going. Keep going. And I'll stop you. I'll give you about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay. Well, one of the things is I'm not just an old student who's saying, hey, I'm just going to run to be student body president. I've actually been at UofL here for quite some time. And before I got in SGA, I was very much not involved in SGA intentionally for the first part of my career. I spent a lot of time in Greek life. I spent time as an SI leader, as a lab tutor, as a TA, as a lecturer, as many things, trying to live out all the different experiences that UofL has to offer. So then when I get to this particular pinnacle of my career, what I'm trying to do now is not only bring to the table those experiences being not an SGA student as well as an SGA student, being an undergrad and a professional undergrad, all those different things to the table. But one of the other great things I have is people who are around me know that I like to advocate for things, especially on behalf of people. And this year, as we come up, every 3 years, the Board of Trustees has the Executive Committee, and they put on each year they put on the different chairs of the different senates. In this case, they'll have the student body president coming up this time around. And one of my strengths is that sometimes I do understand, not just sometimes, I do understand all the time that it's not always my idea that should be the idea brought forward. It's oftentimes the ideas of other people. And I have no problem advocating on behalf of other people, even if it's not necessarily something I personally agree with, because I put the professionalism of the job ahead of what it is my own personal view is. And that's what I bring to the table.
Well, quite honestly, the thing that makes me most qualified to sit on the Board of Trustees is that I've worked alongside every single step of the way this year with the current SGA President, Curtis Rizal, our current student representative on the Board of Trustees. I've worked alongside him. I've helped him make decisions that would affect his decisions in the Board of Trustees. So I've got sort of a secondhand experience, a lot closer than anyone else on this campus other than Curtis, to the Board of Trustees. I know the kind of issues they handle. I'm ready and I'm prepared to tackle those. While I'm not a member of the e-board because I'm not a council president, but I've been in almost every e-board meeting this year either as a proxy or just as an advocating voice. And my voice has been heard in e-board, and I think most people in this room that are on e-board can attest to that. I have no problem going into a room and advocating for something that I strongly believe in. That being said, as opposed to my opponent, I won't go into a room and advocate for something that I don't strongly believe in. Because if it's not one of my convictions, then I'm not going to push for it, to be quite honest. That being said, if it's in the best interest of the students and it falls within my belief set, then absolutely I'll advocate for it, and I won't shut up until it's done. That's the kind of guy I am, because I want to do what's best for students. I want to do what's best for the university, and trust me, the legislators in Frankfurt are already having to deal with my stuff. So the Board of Trustees is going to get the same kind of thing.
Sure. So a couple things with the Board of Trustees. I mean, One of the things is, although my opponent would claim that we're fighting for all students, even at the legislative level, the real truth is that the affordability legislation brought before Kentucky General Assembly does not include any form of graduate or professional mention when it comes to the affordability of college education. It very exclusively states bachelors and undergrads exclusively. And so, I mean, that is a problem because, your graduate and your professional students pay some of the highest tuition of the entire school, and to have us left out of that package is a bit, disconcerting. And the fact that we weren't even involved in the process, I mean, we were just completely cut out. I mean, those types of things concern me. And so when I say that I'm willing to advocate for things that aren't my necessarily personal belief, I've been here a long time, but I also believe that, for example, council presidents know the needs of their constituencies better than the executive branch does, and that's why I want to work with them. And so if they think that something is a little bit better approach than what I have for my own plan, then by golly, that's the plan I'm going to go with the Board of Trustees.
Max is the author of that. Can you say why the language was used?
The language he's referring to is in a statute specifically that deals with undergraduates. That's the Council on Post-Secondary Education. And not to get into too many details, but the caps that they set on tuition, the percent by which tuition can rise and mandatory fees can rise, deal specifically with their policy with undergraduate matters. And that wasn't the issue I was planning to tackle. Now, on the other side of the coin, the definition of affordable that we put forth, which is monetarily attainable by any prospective student, regardless of socioeconomic status, background, or personal or family income, encompasses not only undergraduate students, but graduate students, professional students, and any other student that wants to obtain a higher education in the Commonwealth of Kentucky. I would ask my opponent to read my legislation a little more closely.
Another big concern going forth with SGA, again, is we spoke a little bit about it with the EDP. What do you see as the biggest concern about the SGA budget, and what are your plans for it, Mac?
Well, obviously the first biggest concern is that we began this year for the first time ever with a deficit. If any of you keep up with federal politics, you know that a deficit's not a fun thing to have. And it was something we wanted to correct and not keep a deficit throughout the year. So there were a lot of difficult cuts we had to make. Cuts are never fun, but in this case they were necessary. The executive branch, the branch that I work exclusively with, we worked to cut down on frivolous spending on things like food, on things like koozies to give out to students, because those things aren't necessary. A lot of the times in years past, those things were used as kind of cheap tricks to get people to come out to events, but lines of communication are now being built. The CardCast is the best it's ever been. For those of you that went to the State of the Student Body Address, you saw the quality of our CardCast, and that's reaching out to students. You see Pooja Sangoy's SGA Cares events that are drawing students in and getting them engaged in SGA. You were at my platform event at the beginning of this year that saw over 1,000 students come out and hear what SGA is planning to do for them in the upcoming years. That's how we get people out to our events. And SGA has done a great job this year of cutting that fat, like Mike Shane was talking about a little earlier. We cut the fat, we trim the budget back, and we look at what we really need to be spending money on.
So I think probably my biggest problem with SGA budget, and granted I know that there's potential it may change in the upcoming year of the contingency budget, is simply the notion that a great many of people do get paid a lot of money from SGA. With reference to the cuts that Max is referring to, yes. I mean, part of the reason that we started with the deficit is because the previous administration overspent, some of the councils overspent, and then on top of that, a large portion of SGA's budget, something to the tune of like 25 to 30% of it, was designed to go toward paying everybody that works there. Tuition for the top four, several SAB positions, as well as paying the executive staff, paying the court, paying the Senate, and the council presidents. And that's a lot of money. I mean, that's like 25 to 30% of the student fee that we collect is going just for that. And so, yes, this year we've made some sacrifices. We've obviously taken pay cuts. Some people have even donated their salary, their stipend back to SGA for other events. But what I find interesting is that, when we came in and the Senate was almost basically being forced to take a pay cut, as was staff, as was the judicial branch, when I rose the issue that, well, why isn't the top four taking a pay cut? It took some arm twisting in front of the Senate before they would acquiesce to doing so. And some stepped up right ahead and were able to do it. Others, on the other hand, had to use that to help pay for, their tuition. So it's not so much an issue that I think necessarily even people should get paid, but it is an issue that I think is important, because if you think about it, if we double the student fee this upcoming year to make for a larger budget, then a lot of that is going to pay some people's full tuition. I just want to make sure that that's going to the right places. But more so, my other concern too is that SGA, in many ways, if you look even at the election cycle, it's run very much like a homecoming type thing. You know, people are giving out donuts and cakes and hot chocolate and that sort of thing to acquire votes. And even though that's their own money, I sometimes wonder, you know, is SGA doing the same thing? Are we trying to buy people's participation by giving them other things? And so things like cutting down food, I do think is beneficial, but by the same token, depending on what your constituency is, sometimes food is the only way you can get people out. Like in our cases where you have families, if you're having a nighttime event, you know, a choice of being with your spouse and kids or being at an SGA event, the spouse and kids are probably going to win out, especially at dinner time. So giving them a free piece of food or something can have value. So the idea is that when we look at anything, especially with numbers, we've got to make sure we do it justly and fairly and objectively.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree with that. I mean, we have food at the platform event, but we had a responsible amount of food. It's when there's half your council budget that goes to food is when the problems arise, and I think we agree on that. As far as the top 4 pay goes, actually, there wasn't a whole lot of arm twisting because constitutionally, you can't lower the top 4 pay within the same year. However, what we did do was we lowered it in subsequent years, well, as EVP candidate Shane said, we froze it, and it will not be increasing for the first time ever. It will not be increasing this next year, and the top 4 will not be getting a pay increase. In reference to top 4 pay, a lot, for example, my best friend Kara Monaco, the current services vice president, took a pay cut when she took her current position because getting the stipend from SGA cut her scholarships, and she lost a lot of money. She's actually, in essence, paying to be a part of SGA. So pay isn't necessarily a problem because, as the EVP candidates both talked about, pay a lot of the times is an incentive. It's a responsibility measure. We had a retreat with the University of Cincinnati, and they were amazed about the fact that we pay our senators. They couldn't believe it. But at the end of the day, they were also amazed at the amount of work that our Senate did. And that's where the true effort comes in. Yeah, I see no problem in giving $150 to a senator if they can produce an amount of work that will amaze another university when they come and visit us.
This year in the rewriting of the Constitution, SGA made ELSB its most recent member of arm, I guess you could say, of SGA. ELSB encompasses, I believe, over 16 organizations here at the university. What are your plans for helping to incorporate this new group into the SGA organization, and how do you see ELSB fitting into the framework of student government?
Well, I mean, the basic answer to that would be we're going to have them engage, lead, and serve. Freshman Lead is housed there. That's a program that we are absolutely going to continue because it's one of the most beneficial programs that freshmen get involved in as soon as they get to campus. But obviously, we're going to continue with the many great service projects that come out of there. ULDM, SOAR, and those kind of projects that are very, very beneficial to the university as a whole. But something I really want to focus on this next year is engage. From the Engage Lead Serve Board, we're going to focus on engaging students, not just at our campus, but at every campus at this university. Because our Engage Lead Serve Board should not just lead, should not just serve, but we should be engaging students. I want the Engage Lead Serve Board to take on the task of raising the voting population at this university. I want the Engage Lead Serve Board to take on the task of raising the amount of applications that we get for freshman lead, for task force freshmen, for staff positions after elections are over. I want the Engage Lead Serve Board to take on the task of getting more students involved in RSOs than ever before. And that's what I want to see out of the Engage Lead Serve Board. They're an incredible asset to this SGA. That's why we brought them in to be our Engage Lead and Serve arm. You're going to see amazing things out of the Engage Lead Serve Board if I'm president, and I can guarantee you that. Thanks, KT.
All right. So, I mean, Engage Lead Serve's always been some degree funded by the central administration. It's just now it's a formal part of SGA. So, I mean, to a certain degree, I do agree with Max. I do think that they should engage more on campus. But one thing, too, is that to a certain degree, I think sometimes students tune out SGA and its initiatives because sometimes SGA tries too hard to engage students. Some students actually just want to be left alone. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true in any population. Some students do want to be left alone. But by the same token, these are all great initiatives, and these are all great programs under the Engage Lead Serve Board. The first thing I'm going to do is actually just sit down and talk with all the leaders of their organization and say, what do you all do best? What do you all need help with? How can we facilitate you all doing your job well? And then in return, how can you facilitate us? Because absolutely, if we have an entity inside of SGA that's designed to increase participation and not just voting, but anything, then we need to take advantage of that, because it also takes a lot of burden off of our dedicated staff members in the Senate and others. Not that all of us shouldn't be trying to promote SGA as much as possible.
I mean, I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, the first step in any process is sitting down and laying out a plan. So once we get those goals laid down, many of which I just named for you, you're going to see, like I said, some amazing things out of Engage, Lead, Serve if I'm president.
Okay. We're going to move on to student questions. We have a long list. I guess one of the first questions that I'm going to ask is, multiple students have been concerned with maybe the lack of diversity in student groups that have been represented on the SGA staff this year. What will you do as president to help ensure that the executive branch is well-rounded on its staff so it represents all aspects of campus?
I'm a firm believer in all the years that I've been involved with different leadership activities at UofL, whether it be Greek life or student government or what have you, that the best way is to find the best people and maybe have a good second and a third in mind based on their skill set, but also what they can bring to the table, not just about who they know in that capacity. And so one of the things I want to do is, we do all this campaigning to try and get votes. We got all the different student groups and all that. But what I'd like to do is actually, once we get into office, to go and do the exact same thing, to reach out to every single RSO and not just send a delegate, but actually send the top 4 to there, bring some, bring maybe who's going to be the chief of staff for the first few appointed positions and say, look, we need to have you here. Not because we want to make you SGA drones or anything like that or plug you into the system, but what we want to do is make sure that we're representing your needs. I mean, SGA is here for you. UofL, to a certain degree, is here for you as well. We all work together as a family and a community. It's students, it's staff, it's administrators, the whole line of it. And so, what I want to do is encourage those things. But the other truth is that to a certain degree, SGA is going to have to break down a perceptual barrier to these people and let them know that, you can apply. It's not just that you're going to apply and we're going to remove you later, kick you out and put somebody else in your spot. That we want you to apply and we want you to stay and we want to work with you, and not only work with you, but make you better at your position, so that when you go out, you can not just simply list on a resume, well, I did this for SGA, I did this and I made this kind of a difference, and this is how I'm a better person. Because there's a lot to learn in SGA, not just about how to do the job, but how to become a better leader in general. And that's what I want to make sure that we're also providing our staff.
Diversity is something that's really, really important to me. I mean, look around the room at the people on my slate, involved with my slate. Cards Unite is the diverse slate in this race. We come from all walks of life, all different backgrounds, and that's what makes us so great. That's why we assembled a team like this, because we're diverse and we're also very, very qualified for the positions we're running for. Just yesterday at the State of the Student Body Address, Janessa Siegel said that it was one of the commitments of the Association of Black Students to get more black students involved in SGA. And we're answering that call, but we're not stopping there. We're not stopping with black students. My staff is going to have people from every single walk of life, because new ideas and different backgrounds and different modes of thinking and experiences, that is what fosters new and positive ideas for the student body. We're here to work for the students, not one set of students. I'm not going to have an all-Greek system. I'm not going to have an all-white system, an all-black system, or a system of just 2 or 3 groups. I'm going to have a system that represents every single group on this campus. Man, woman, black, white, straight, gay, I don't care. You're going to be on my staff, and your voice is going to be heard, and it's going to be heard loud.
So just kind of addressing back to that, it's interesting that they mentioned that you were commenting about the black students want more involvement in SGA, because back in the day, it used to be that we would have 3 slates run, or 3.5 slates, or 4 slates run. Even one year there was a slate composed of all international and cultural students on there. And so, to a certain degree, over the past, between 2005 and 2008, SGA has seen a lot of, decline in its participation. So, not only just reaching out, but there clearly is, like I said before, some type of perceptual issue involved that we need to address. I mean, and part of me not, stepping up to be a part of SGA till later in my career is directly as a result of that. I mean, I hear the same type of stuff. Oh, it's political. Oh, it's, back scratching and that sort of thing. And so, I mean, I think Max and I both are in agreement here that the key is to reach out and to make sure that we have our diverse population. But also, not just to have it for 1 year, we need to instill a sense of permanence, so that when we do these things, when we have this involvement, say 1 year, that we also have the same involvement the next year and the year after that and that sort of thing. So that's my plan.
One of the main things that comes out of the SGA administration is a lot is the SGA president becomes kind of the figure that everything comes back to. Ex-president did this, ex-president did that. It becomes a lot about the administration itself. As SGA president, what would you do to help ensure that not only that your administration got credit, but the people who are responsible for that, so that people maybe on your staff, the Senate, do not feel like the body of SGA, that it's everybody together, not necessarily just the SGA president. So what would you do to help ensure that?
So I don't take credit for other people's work. I mean, in the academic world, that's considered plagiarism. In the professional world, it's just simply not professional. Ever since I've been, whether it be Triangle president, IFC president, or GSE president, when somebody does something for me, I make sure to reach out to them. I make sure to mention their name in front of a meeting, in front of other people, because that's part of making sure that they're going to come back again and that they're going to participate and they're going to do great things for the university. So I plan to do the exact same thing, because ultimately I'm not in this for me, I'm in it for everybody else. And I want to make sure that everybody else that steps forward gets the recognition they deserve. I mean, even just recently, one of the things I was working on in the Senate was trying to make sure that our non-traditional students can have the ability to get season tickets if they want to. And that idea came from Miss Julia Nimbo in the SAC. So the very first thing I did that night was to write her and say, we got it through and we were able to get this thanks to her advice and her help. And so it's little things like that, you know, making that known to the public that there are people. I think that's part of why SGA has a perception too that it's just a closed-knit system of people. It's because we're not sharing, we're just taking, you know, it all filters down to the top figure, essentially, or the top figures. And so that's why it's important. Anytime you're building a pyramid, you've got to have a strong base. And that strong base are your participants. Those are the everyday people out there in the field making the connections, hearing the problems, and making sure they get relayed to the right place. And that's what I'm going to try and make sure that I do, and that starts with promoting the people that are working for you in a positive manner.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of credit where credit is due. When one of my staff members completes a task, then they're the one that's going to be in CardCast talking about it. They're the one that I'm going to tell administrators that accomplished this task, and I'll bring them to the meeting with me to introduce them to those administrators so they get the credit for the work that they did. Curtis, I love you to death, but one of your weaknesses is delegating and the credit where credit is due. When my diversity associate makes those important connections with the intersection, with ABS, then they're going to get that credit. They're going to be the one talking about it, and they're going to be the one that's lauded in every meeting concerning that. This is not going to be the Max Morley administration. This is going to be known as the administration that turned things around. This is going to be not the Max Morley administration. This is going to be known as the administration that fought to protect student tuition. And this isn't going to be the Max Morley administration. This is going to be known as the most diverse and the most productive administration in the history of our university's SGA.
Okay. I'm going to take this question to that on to what we did. The question is, how are you going to put UofL on the map? How are you going to better, I guess, the university? So the way I'm going to phrase the question is your first day in office, what's your first priority? What's the first thing that you're going to do to help ensure the University of Louisville moving forward is in the strongest position that it can for students? Max.
All right. Well, I don't know how many of y'all watched the Super Bowl, but Clint Eastwood told all of us that America is at halftime. It's halftime here in America, and it's halftime here at the University of Louisville. In my first day in office, my number one priority is going to be college affordability, just like it has been this last year. Because tuition's going up next year, and there's nothing we can do about it right now, but there is work we can do in the future. I've got 2 bills. After this one goes through, I've got 2 more that are ready to be written, that are ready to be proposed, that are ready to be introduced to the Kentucky General Assembly, that are going to protect Keys money for Kentucky students, and are going to keep prices low, not just on tuition, but on mandatory fees, on mandatory meal plans, and for the incoming freshmen, mandatory housing costs. Because you don't think about it, but the CPE only sets those caps on tuition and mandatory fees. So the university is able to jack up the prices on mandatory meal plans and mandatory housing to cover some of their costs, and that's wrong. So those are the kind of things I'm going to tackle first day in office. My team has the ability to do this. We as a university have the potential for greatness. It's right within our reach, and my team and I are going to lead us in the right direction. And just like Louisville, we're the leaders of the rally for higher education in Frankfurt, Louisville is going to be the leader in the nation. Not the state, and not the region, but the nation. I'm protecting students, I'm putting students first, and I'm making sure that the students in their state can get a quality, affordable education here at one of the best universities.
So one of the things that I'm going to do first thing I get in office is, although I do represent all students, of course, but I'm going to do one thing and advocate for one student group that is consistently left out by the student government, and that would be some of your graduate and professional students. In particular, and that's not to say just their needs, but it's going to be the first thing I'm going to do. I want to actually address legislation in Frankfurt that deals specifically with graduate and professional students. Oftentimes in Frankfurt, we're completely left out of the picture. I'm not just talking about like Max, but in general, graduate students are left out of the picture when it comes to big things. But more importantly, when you look around and you go to classes at UofL, you probably have seen at least one TA teaching one of your courses. What's not really understood a lot of times is that those people, when they go home, they work 60 to 100-hour weeks just trying to do what their advisors tell them to do. That could be in a lab, that could be teaching classes. In fact, there are some TAs that teach more classes. There's a lot of TAs that teach more classes than their actual advising professors do as they're trying to get work. And the problem with that is that unlike when you're an undergraduate student, for example, you can go out and work. You can go out and hold a job and you can make money. But when you're a TA and you're a grad student, you can't do that. You're limited by federal law to only work 20 hours a week, although it's kind of a laughable number, but you're not allowed to take in a certain amount of money beyond a certain point, because if you do, the taxes don't apply. For a lot of our students, especially the international ones that come overseas, if they upset their advisor, they get sent across the way. Some of them even have to try and support a spouse and children on a meager TA salary, which is usually compared to the poverty level in Louisville in general. So these are things that I at least want to bring to the forefront, because in many ways, UofL administrators over the years do not want to touch those issues with a 10-foot pole. I've been told by several administrators that very fact. And I want to advocate for those people. But by the same token, it's because that we're all here together, and those students serve as the backbone to our education system. They get a lot of things done for our teachers, and a lot of times they're the ones who are left out. They don't have the rights, the same rights that staff have. They can't take family medical leave in case they have a sick one get ill. They have to try and arrange it. I mean, I know these things sometimes sound awful, but a lot of times I think when we're an undergrad student, when I was an undergrad student, I had no idea until I became a TA, until I had to work in lab really long hours. And that is the type of experience that I had that I want to bring to the table, just for the simple fact to bring those issues more to the forefront than I've been bringing them this year. And then, well, that'd be fine. I'll pass to Max and go again.
Well, first I'd like to say that I'm the first undergraduate person running for president that I've ever heard of that has had the gall to reach out and put a graduate student on the slate. The first phone call I made was to Mike Shane, undoubtedly the most qualified person on this or any other campus to be an executive vice president. He's worked hard, and he's one of the best, genuinely best people I know. And he's ready to step into this position. And he knows the affairs of grad school, and he knows the affairs of undergrads. Well, one thing I would like to say really quickly, sorry, I must have flattered you. One thing I would like to say really quickly is that under my opponent's leadership, the Graduate Student Council, and those of you that are in Senate can attest to this, has distanced themselves from the Senate, from the executive branch, specifically in this Frizzell administration. And as soon as I get in office, I'm going to reach out to the new grad school council and try to rebuild those bridges, because they are important just like any other council, and I want them to be represented just like every other council is. No matter how big, like arts and sciences, or small, like dental. Every council is equally important. And my first day, I'm going to reach out to those new officers, well, as soon as they get elected, and say, let's rebuild these bridges. Let's see what common ground we can find. Let's work together, and let's not repeat these last couple of years, because they've been a tragedy, and it's terrible. But I'm not going to stop with grad. I'm going to go to dental. I'm going to go to medical. I'm going to go to every single school that makes this university so great. And I'm going to really rebuild our SGA, bring us back, and I'm going to make sure that the unite part of Cards Unite doesn't go in vain.
Sure. Well, just to clarify a few things on that. As far as grad student council goes in general, we've had higher participation this year, especially when it comes to people offering their opinions on how to make things better. Graduate Student Council operates differently than a lot of councils because we're primarily advocate-driven to the UofL and not so much event-driven. But when it comes to actual Senate, I mean, to a certain degree, it is the Graduate Student Council that is constantly looking over the resolutions, constantly proofing things. And I don't mind being the person to address the white elephant in the room. And, unfortunately, sometimes when the Graduate Student Council or its leaders or membership are being cut out of important things and important decisions about consultation, yes, it is a bit of tension that has to be addressed. And I wouldn't actually be the first Graduate Student Council president to come off in that manner sometimes. And it's not a bad manner. It's just simply saying that we all have our constituencies, and any senator who's in the Senate not advocating for their constituencies as best they can is not really doing their job to a certain degree. And so when you are representing a left out population in large degree, yeah, I mean, sometimes emotions flare, and I'm willing to come out there and come swinging in many ways. But that doesn't mean that I'm a difficult person to get along with, and it absolutely doesn't mean that I'm not an open-minded person, because, as I've said over the years, I've been doing this for a very long time, not just student government, but other things, because people come to me. They come to me with their problems, and they're coming to me because they want a solution, and they know that I'm willing to go stand up against the machine to make sure it happens. Thank you.
Okay. Kind of on that same note, both are strong community people. You both have been local.
Us? No.
Both of you. With that, sometimes comes the ruffling from people's feathers, and you don't always, not like the most beloved person in the room. But still, but still, as SGA president, you have to be able to cooperate. You have to be able to work for the best interest of all students, no matter your position and what you feel is best for the student population. So I'd like for both of you all to give an example of cooperation you've done either in SGA or outside of SGA, and how you think that situation prepares you in that attribute of cooperation for SGA president. So I think you go first.
I don't remember.
All right, Max, you go first.
Okay. Yeah, I first let me say that I think both of us have a tendency to ruffle feathers, but one of my personal heroes that I got to have the opportunity to work with this summer, as I mentioned, I was statewide volunteer coordinator for the Kentucky Democratic Party, and in that capacity, I was the volunteer coordinator for the re-election campaign for Governor Steve Beshear. And one of my favorite lines that Steve Beshear says it comes right at the end of one of his go-to stump speeches, and it says, "But I'll do anything to stand up and do what's right for the people of Kentucky." And I'll take that to heart, because I will do anything. I'll ruffle feathers, I'll shake hands, but I will do what is right for the people at the University of Louisville. Now, that being said, I would like to go back to my work at the Kentucky Democratic Party and a lot of cooperation we had to have there. There's two different things when it comes to state politics. There's the party system, and there are campaigns. Each candidate has their individual campaign, and then there's the party that works with all the Democratic campaigns. I work for the party, and a lot of the times the party and the individual campaigns don't necessarily get along too well. Our Secretary of State currently, her campaign for Allison Lonergan-Grimes wasn't too keen on working well with the party, but as statewide volunteer coordinator, it was still my responsibility to get out volunteers, 500 volunteers statewide, to make those phone calls, over 100 phone calls a day, to make sure they were at our events, to plan those events in every area of the state, some areas of the state that I've never been to. I had to work to make sure that even though she was sending things to us saying, stop helping, we have this, we don't necessarily need you, it was still my job, and I knew my job was to get her elected. And I worked day in and day out, and I made those phone calls, and I set up those meetings, and I organized those events all over the state. And at the end of the day, she got elected, whether she wanted it or not.
So, from my experience, this comes from my non-SGA experience, I suppose. The very first time I took office as president of my fraternity, and we had just gone through, the very first meeting I had to run was a membership vote in the fraternity. So for those of you that are Greek, you understand what that is. Those of you that aren't Greek, if you can imagine like removing somebody from office and say SGA, but twice the drama and even worse with tempers flaring. And the biggest challenge with something like that is when you have a chapter that is pretty well split in half on their opinions on the matter, it makes the beginning and the remainder of your term very difficult. And it took me a good year and a half to work and rebuild the bridges together. Not just myself with the people, of course, I got along with them just fine, but trying to get the people to interact with the people, trying to make the organization strong, keep it together, and not only that, but move forward. And that, my friends, is very, very difficult to do sometimes. Because you're not just dealing with one person or a few people, you're dealing with all sorts of people who just hate each other and at their throats, and you're trying to make it work cohesively and make sure that people remember that, hey, we're here to become better men together. And so that's kind of the spirit I want to bring to SGA in general.
I'm gonna say something there real quick. Yeah, I'm on the EC of my fraternity too, and just so everybody knows, being on EC is just you're a glorified babysitter, especially for a fraternity. No, yeah, I completely sympathize with the pledge votes. I'm in charge of the pledge votes for our fraternity, so I completely sympathize with that. And I can tell you right now, it's not easy trying to work with that.
This is the actual active member expulsion.
Oh, never mind.
All right,
I did that too,
I'm going to do
though.
something as well that I didn't do the other candidates. I'm just going to give you a minute to make your last minute.
We're not talking about how we like each other.
Can we do that first?
Go after that.
Oh, okay.
You can do your last look after that. Always on happy. So you each are going to get a minute. Matt, you're probably going to do your minute first, and then Travis. This minute is just yours.
Like I said a little earlier, it's halftime at the University of Louisville. And you have three choices between SGA presidents. Your student body president should be three things. It should be someone with experience, it should be someone you can relate to and trust, and someone you know that's going to go out and fight for you. I've worked in SGA for 2.5 years, and I've put 2 pieces of legislation through the Kentucky General Assembly. I have the experience. I've faced those issues that we will address. I pay for the commuter meal plan. My tuition has been raised every year that I've been here. And the other day, I was mugged off campus. So I understand the importance of safety here. These problems are as real to me as they are to anybody else here. And I've already shown through my organizing of the Rally for Higher Education, the drafting of those 2 pieces of legislation, and my continued vigor with the work and the legislators up in Frankfurt, that I will never, ever stop fighting for you or anyone at this university. Like I said a little earlier, we have the potential for greatness, and it is within our grasp. And under the presidency of Max Morley, and under the work of the Cards Unite slate, we are going to be the leaders in the nation as a university, as an SGA, and as a student body at this university. Thank you.
Fellow students, as Max said, experience, trustability, and fighting for you. Those are 3 qualities which I have in great measure. Experience, I've been here for 12 years and constantly involved from day one, being involved in academic services, tutoring services, career services, labs, teaching, and then of course in student government and Greek life as well. As far as being able to relate and trust, you know, I have people who come to me all the time asking me to solve their problems, whether it be anything administrative, into doing research, financial, you name it, or trying to figure out, you know, how to get maternity coverage for some of the people that we represent. If you want somebody that's going to fight for you, there's been somebody that has been fighting for you in the entire time of this Senate, making sure that there aren't abuses of power, making sure that your budget isn't going to just pay for the executive branch, and trying to also look at, you know, before the contingency budget, but the real budget this year, trying to make sure that all the councils didn't have any council funding. And you're looking at that person right here. You know, one thing is when it comes time to the actual regulations and legislation in Kentucky, one of the things I'm going to fight for, as I said, is for all students in the language explicitly, but also to use stronger words other than we urge the General Assembly to consider college affordability, but actually take something and change something that goes far beyond just the scope of a small resolution and actually do something about it.
All right, and then our last question, I guess Max, you can be in here. What quality you see in, just go to Travis right now, you think we can qualify as J.
First, just real quick on legislation, I want to point out that there is a resolution and a bill, and he read from the resolution, but the bill has much stronger language. But anyway, Travis is very, very passionate. You have your convictions, and you're very passionate about what you do. I mean, you speak up in every meeting that you're at, and you speak well and eloquently, and you speak on behalf of your constituents, and that's something that I really respect about you.
And I would have to say the same thing about Max. I mean, I know he and I disagree on a lot of things to a certain degree, but to a certain degree, you know, I don't take what Max says personally. I hope you don't do the same either, because we're here looking we're looking out for the best interests of everybody. And, you know, UofL is diverse, and that also means diversity in opinions. And it also means that there's a diversity in the way of going about it. And so I also respect you very much for the fact that you are willing to step out, especially considering that you're not a senator and you're not a council president. You do come to those meetings, and you're there to express on behalf of the staff as well. It's very good call.
All right, thank you guys. And I want to thank everybody.
Hold on.
We're not done.
I don't know if you saw the last debate, but
Making this a tradition.
Oh, yeah.
to the